Hi, good morning or good afternoon, and welcome to the TCI What We Need Spotlight interview series. We sincerely thank you for being available for this session and giving us your time. I would now request you to please tell us your name, where do you live, and what do you do?
I'm Kim Wichera. I live in Berlin in Germany, and I am involved in a lot of activism on the topics of mental health and also the rights of users and survivors of psychiatry. And at the same time, I'm also an artist and work a lot, either curating shows, but also like showing my own performance installations. And I guess those two things are mainly what I do. Yeah. And I can also elaborate a little bit longer about like exactly, but perhaps just for a starter, it's what I'm doing.
Thank you, Kim, for that introduction. If you want to, you can elaborate on it. We have time.
Yeah. So I work in an anti-psychiatric facility, which is based in Berlin, Germany, and it's called the Weglaufhaus in German, or in English, the Runaway House. So coming from runaway from psychiatric institutions. And we are like a house that already exists since 1996. And I worked there since 2005. And it's basically a place where up to 13 people can stay for also longer term, like even up to years. And usually people who are coming to us are homeless and are seeking for support, which is very intense because we are like there for 24 hours every day. And it's a support based on the determination of the residents, working without diagnosis. Instead, we're working with the description and with the experience of the residents and the way they are telling us what is actually helpful and what not. So this is like structuring our work a lot in the sense of the needs and the rights of the people who are coming to actually looking for support. And also in the way that we work, we want to give the most possible control to the residents and make our structures very transparent so they can, for example, read in their file, they can change our notes in there, they can like listen when we talk about them from one shift to the next or in our team meetings. And also like residents are involved in, they can, after they stayed in our house, they can even work there as internship or like even as a worker, and some of them actually do this, and that's also I think a little bit a specialty of the Weglauf is that at least half of the members of the staff are also people with lived experience. And I would say that's a good short description of what is this kind of special institution. And at the same time, from this work, which is more based on also a lot of like direct support with people, came a lot of political activism in this fields of for the rights of people who are users and survivors. And we had like small groups here in Berlin when we did like manifestations or just giving workshops about topics of radical peer support or just giving introductions about how to tapering off psychiatric meds or alternatives to suicide. And all from all this kind of political action, there was, for example, like also a great collaboration between the disability rights movement and more the Mad Pride movement. And from this, we created and were able to create actually like an Pride parade from Mad and disability movement together. And it still exists and is happening every 2 years here in Berlin. And also from that, and I like a lot actually working in groups and collectives. So I usually am more involved in doing it and working in groups, as I think those questions and kind of like issues that we are referring to also needs a collective answer, and an answer that is more based in a community, where we look about how we treat each other, how we give each other space, how we want to create actually a community. So in another small group which I'm involved in, we're editing books, and we have like this book series with like about 250 pages, 300 pages, with different articles on the issue of psychiatry, mental health system, and how critique on it, how it can be changed, but also looking at it from a special background, like, for example, racism in psychiatry, but also like how psychiatry is treating trans people, also just how are there any ways of supporting each other without a professionalized system. And right now at the moment, I am also a part of the network INTER, which is the International Network Towards Alternatives and Rights-Based Supports. And we are also organizing international conferences where we speak and get involved with local initiatives, organizations, NGOs, and trying to create connections between the movement international so that we create a stronger voice to change. And I'm a little bit like involved in a lot of different things. I'm also very glad that this year I started working with the Institute for Development of Human Arts, which is based in New York, and we are creating a curriculum for transformative mental health, which I think is actually very important, that this knowledge is now created by also the users and people with lived experience, and that we create a kind of knowledge that is taught, that is informed by like power structures, and is giving people who work in the system a different way to work there without violence, and being informed about discrimination, about trauma. And I guess this is the bigger answer to what I actually do besides my artwork. Yeah.
No, thank you. Thank you. That was a wonderful overview. So thank you for that. So we'll move on to the next question now. So this spotlight interview is based on our thematic area of lived experiences of persons with intersectional identities. In our movement, we always start our conversations with and around personal identity. We started out by saying that we are a movement of persons with psychosocial disabilities. We wish to ask you if you relate to that identity, and please do share any reflections on identity positions that you feel can support our advocacy and our movement.
So this is I think very important question. It's also a little bit complex to answer. For me, for a lot of years, being involved in, for example, this work in the runaway house, I always saw myself as someone who is, for example, because we have like different definitions or terms which we are working with, and it's like, for example, for us, being with lived experience is definitely about someone who has been in a closed ward in a psychiatric institution. So for example, was never in a closed ward of a psychiatric institution, but I, for example, left my family with 16 years old and lived like in youth shelters, and more like in the system for supporting of the youth. And also have a lot of crisis experience, which like a lot of different topics if it comes to like suicide attempts, or just not like feeling a lot of anxiousness, or just not feeling well in my body. So I have a lot of momentums of crisis, and at the same time I was in the happy position to always been in a good community where I was supported, and even in my worst days, I never felt that I'm running out of options to find support in my community, in my friends, my people. So I was happy to not having to refer to, for example, going to a psychiatric ward or to a closed ward even. So just to say that I think there's a difference. And at the same time, for me as an non-binary trans person who, if I want to have like certain kind of services from the health insurance, or also like just for like gender affirming care, I have to actually navigate to the system of gatekeeping between like the medicine sector and the psychiatric sector, where you have to get kind of like consultations, going to a psychiatrist, them gonna like asking you very intimidating questions, and I would say it's a kind of like a very traumatizing experience, as you as a person who definitely knows who you are and what you need is going to a system which is kind of like giving you a permit to be or to actually exist, and it's like they are in a power position where they can also decide on what would happen in like any further way of your transition. And at the same time, usually they lack a lot of this experience, because they usually look from the outside with this kind of like scientific look from, and when I'm saying like from the outside, I mean like usually heterosexual cis people who then have like actually patients who come to them which are trans or non-binary, and they are deciding for us if we're gonna get the services that we need. So this is the way of like gatekeeping, but also very violent, and also like not enabling to actually live a good life. So, and I would say this is like the way that in a bigger complex picture, I refer to my reflections of my identity positions. And at the same time, I'm for sure, I know that I'm still very privileged to like being white, to have a lot of like knowledge about the social system because I work in the sector. So for me, even navigating it is easier than for a lot of people. So and as said, like I'm in this position where I'm not, for example, have never been to a closed ward. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the reflections on that question. Okay, and moving on to the last question. You've been a part of our networks and activities, Kim, such as participating in the webinar series on DI, and you said as being part of the entire conference. And we wish to ask you if you would please tell us what you find promising in this movement led by TCI-Global.
Thank you for this question. I think this might be a little bit the most difficult question for me to answer, because as much as I follow the activity of TCI-Global, and I'm also have been part of this conference in Pune in 2018 and meeting a lot of people from Babu Trust, and knowing the activities and being very much actually from the kind of Babu Trust organized on the local side, the conference, it was for me something very special to see all this knowledge, all this care, all this overview of very much interconnection between working from the voices of the users and the people with lived experience, and in a broad movement across a lot of countries, and focusing a lot on how can we actually change our situation, and also having at the same time this conveys, conference, like stakeholder meetings, but also like global policy meetings, which organizations like the United Nations. I feel that TCI is an organization that is, since only not even like 10 years, like getting so much stronger and building connections worldwide based on the rights and the question of, for example, as the TCI campaign, what we need, on our needs, and on focus on the rights and how we can actually together in a community transform the way that we find like a space in society. And I think this is very important, especially that it's not like an isolated activity, but one that is quite connected and also coming from a lot of different countries, and not only from like Western countries, not even like TCI-Global, as it's not based in the Western hemisphere. So yeah, perhaps this as my answer.
No, thank you so much for sharing that answer. I understood it. But yeah, so with that, we end this interview. We thank you again for giving us the time to do this interview and telling us about your work. And all the best for all your multiple tasks ahead.
Thank you so much, Risha, and thank you for your time and for asking me. I'm looking forward for the further work together with TCI Global.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.